Alrighty, what is up, everybody? Connor K 40K on the beat right now. What is up? So, I'm not done with Ahriman the omnibus, but if you could sort of see, I'm like almost halfway. I'm at page 400, I think. I'll actually look right now. 405. So, I'm making some decent headway, but I figured I might as well kind of start off the video anyway. I'll make this a part one. So, without further ado, let's get into this. So, first off, we start with Ahriman exile. So, this is sort of taking place while Ahriman gets kicked out of the Thousand Sons. Magnus says, I don't really, I don't like you anymore, my boy. You got to skedaddle. He does. And we find Ahriman, who's now going under the name Horkos, under a warband that's currently inhabiting a ship called Titan's Child. I believe I'm getting that right, Titan's Child. And he's kind of there just masking his presence, getting by. Obviously, with Ahriman, it's of course trying to undo the Rubique, but right now he's just kind of dealing with exile in his own little special way, and he's concealing his powers. And of course, with Tzeentch and with Ahriman himself, there's a lot of conflict because again, this is a pretty pivotal point in his life. He just got kicked out of the brotherhood he's so desperately trying to save, and it's obviously affecting him negatively. But when you're reading the book, it's kind of not implied, but it's up to your interpretation. But when I was reading it, and he monologues, he has his inner thoughts. He's thinking, "I'm not worthy. I should have died." Yada yada yada. There's one way you could interpret it, either i.e. it's really his thoughts, or it's Tzeentch sort of thinking for him, trying to goad him to change his fate or accept his fate. Either way, it's really unknown what Tzeentch wants. But Ahriman, of course, ends up giving him what he wants regardless. So before I really get into Ahriman, I like to sort of dive into the side characters of the stories because I believe the side characters just enhance the main character. So of course, am I going to start with a Space Marine? No, actually, I'm actually going to go with Carmenta, who's a sort of rogue tech adept, and she is unique in the fact that she's sort of melding with Titan Child, who has another personality within it, and it's called. And I'm going to go check right now. All right, so the ship's personality, the name of the Titan Child, the machine spirit within it was called Egon, and Carmenta is sort of melding with Egon, and I think it's a really cool perspective of what we get with machine spirits because we don't typically see machine spirits interact in a way that we can really see their personalities. And Egon does speak with Carmenta. He's afraid. He doesn't want to go further into the eye, but they have to. Ahriman's trying to kind of get control of this warband that he's been working under because he has come to a decision. But that's not important right now when discussing Carmenta, because Carmenta, unfortunately, is dealt with a near-death experience and is sort of zapped. Her personality becomes Titan Child, which later becomes like the Kyrax, or the ship it's now known as now. And she's just really, it's interesting because I'm not the biggest tech, adept guy. I'm not really for the Adeptus Mechanicus. I'm not a huge fan, but I don't dislike them. But it's just interesting seeing her meld with the machine and seeing how her options are limited, because this is in a point where traders can't really leave the eye because Cadia is still standing and is still very much fortified and is a big deal. So that was Carmenta. I really enjoyed her. She's an awesome character. Now, Astraeus, hopefully I'm saying the name right. So Astraeus acts as Ahriman's pupil in a way. He's found in the warband that Ahriman's currently kind of hiding in, and he's a former librarian, but his renegade chapter in Homeworld was just destroyed by the Inquisition. So I can't really say I'm a big fan of Astraeus, but I can appreciate him because Ahriman seems to really enjoy taking the mentorship role. But can kind of be ascribed to most Thousand Sons because, one, they have egos, they're wizards. Two, I think he just likes to have this sort of brotherhood even, or just a familiarity since they're both psychers and kind of work within the same framework of, we work with the warp and knowledge is power, and the only thing more powerful than knowledge is the knowledge to achieve more power, or whatever. It's a quote, I probably butchered it, but it stands to fact again. Astraeus does serve a purpose as his pupil, and he's interesting. He has his own personality. His own brothers are they sworn an oath to Ahriman to serve his goals and whatnot. So that's really all for him right now. His story's still developing and still getting much more interesting now as I read. I'm not going to spoil it. Well, I might spoil a little. But, the Inquisition kind of takes part in this story, but they're not important. So let's kind of jump to the warband. So we have Marath, or Maroth, I think. He's lame. I don't like him. He's a psyker. He uses, he's a mage. He's serving another master. Ahriman brutally beats this dude down, like beats the brakes off him. And it's just funny. He's not really super important yet, so, And then, all right, finally, Amon. So Amon, if any of you are reading the Horus Heresy or familiar with the Horus Heresy, I was reading the Lexicanum, and he's apparently a recurring character. So Amon is currently hunting Ahriman and has found him in this warband, and his goal is essentially to destroy the Thousand Sons. This is how, in his vision, he will ease the pain of the Legion and stop what Ahriman tried to do, which was, again, stop the flesh change and free his Legion from Tzeentch. Amon plays a really good kind of antagonist role to Ahriman in the fact that their goals are similar, they're paralleled within each other, but in drastically different ways. They both want to heal their Legion, but one side, Amon, the Legion needs to end. It needs to perish. We can't have Rubicae. They return to dust, and they will stay as dust forever. Ahriman, of course, with him, the common trend is one more ritual, one more artifact. I need to bring the Legion back. So again, Amon's not super important, but he does serve a really important narrative role that further solidifies Ahriman and his goals and ambitions, because he sort of reignites his passion to save the Legion. So most of the side characters out of the way, let's kind of jump into Ahriman and this story in Ahriman Exile. So again, as I mentioned earlier in the video, he's afraid, he's damaged, he's conflicting emotions, constantly questioning himself, and you can infer whether it's Tzeentch speaking for him or not. But he's, Horkos, who's Ahriman, is maneuvering through the warband trying to preserve himself. But then, of course, Amon shows up, there's conflicts about, and this sort of leads to Ahriman really coming to grips with what's going to happen, and he needs to buck up or shut up, and he chooses to buck up. So Ahriman, of course, kind of goes through, he ebbs and flows in power in this book, and there's reasons for that. So Tzeentch sort of kind of communicates with him throughout not only this story, but in all the other stories. And this is really awesome because this is one of the rare instances where we can infer that it's either an aspect of Tzeentch, a demon of Tzeentch that represents him, or Tzeentch himself speaking to Ahriman. It's always interesting to see these eldritch, creatures talking to our main characters. That's really awesome. But Ahriman essentially can either snap his fingers and kill everybody, or he can't. So Tzeentch pushes him to do so when it's for his own selfish needs. But when he tries to do it for the Legion or anyone else, his power is obviously not there. And I think that's really interesting because I came to the thought of this, right? So chaos really rewards people who either A, are so they're so 100% against chaos, and they think they're not the tools of chaos, but instead they're using chaos. So i.e. Ahriman and Fabius Bile, and chaos rewards them because their beliefs and their emotions are so pure, driven in the fact that their motivations are for them and them alone, that chaos sort of elevates them. And then there's the second half where they've kind of given themselves over to chaos fully and don't care that they're pawns, and they just sort of serve their gods the best way they can because it really only benefits them, i.e. Karn, Lucius, Typhus. So That's just a little aside, but it's really interesting to see in this book because Ahriman, again, there are instances where he's cornered by other Marines and he could easily take them out, but because he has these conflicting emotions of whether he wants to or not for him, because when he does, there's like a sample in here where he does take out a bunch of Marines easily and he could sense them from miles and miles away. He kind of gets like high for not high, but like he gets like an ego boost. Like, when you do something really good and you're like, whoa, you're in that flow state. That's what Ahriman is essentially doing when he's tapping into the warp successfully, mind you, not when I mentioned, the ebb and flow. This is Master Ahriman's, favored son of the Red Prince. And it's just, boom, he does it. But then he keeps thinking, I can do more, I can do more, I can do more. Does he? In a way, he does. But essentially, the story ends with him taking over the Titan Child, killing the coordinate warband that he was kind of under. And if any of you are interested, the warband's leader was a Grezzo, and it was funny because it's a coordinate warband, but he had a bunch of sorcerers in his group, his tight knit inner circle, which is kind of funny because Korn doesn't like sorcery, but if it gets the job done, I'm sure he doesn't mind. But that being said, it was interesting, and the story kind of ends off with him talking to Astraeus and his brothers and Amon, whatever, and he's essentially just like I know what I have to do. I will save my legion again. And that kind of leads into the next story. All right, so this kind of leads into the next story, a tale of Kestius. Then it's like the Dead Oracle, which is another character in the previous story of Ahriman Exile. I think his name was Menkura, and he's this mutated Thousand Son. I don't know if it's due to the change either because he was using the warp as much or the flesh change or whatever the case is. He's another character who sort of was in the first book, but I didn't really touch on him on the first book, and now he's kind of important in the second book. Ahriman's talking to him because he's trying to find an artifact that can sort of help him find, the lost book of Magnus and see if he can help him undo the Rubicae. And Menkura is, again, this mutated oracle, I guess, now. And Ahriman's asking him a question, and essentially, with the warp, there comes prices, and there's another space marine and Ahriman sends Astraeus to find this space marine who's invested in Ahriman because he serves Tzeentch, and he says, there's nothing greater than me finding Ahriman now because he serves the great changer of fates better than I ever could. And there's obviously a lot going in here, and I don't want to go into super major duper spoiler territory, although I probably might. But just remember, I'm still reading this, and the details aren't fresh. I do have notes, but they're not really in-depth notes. It's really just character names and me just bullet points. So I know these are rough because my videos aren't super edited. This is more like in the format of me talking to a friend. So I get if this is kind of confusing or if the details aren't being fully shot out at you in a way you'd really expect it from like lore channels or whatnot. But I promise you, it's worth it to hear me talk about the things I'm interested in because I get pretty excited about them. So anyway, with Menkura, he's telling them that there is a way, but you need to seek this the sorcerer. But then Amon sends in this demon or a bunch of demons, and they kill him, but he's still alive because Tzeentch fuckery and whatnot. The really how I can summarize this book is just a lot of warp fuckery. And by the way, Ahriman has another conversation with Tzeentch in this as he's talking about the Wolves of Fenris, who are currently, the Space Wolves, who are currently tracking him, and Tzeentch is like kind of taking the role of a raven, and then as a man with a burned face. And Ahriman thinks, "Are you my father?" And then Tzeentch laughs each time this is said, and he's like, "No, but you're my favorite son." And he's like, "I know you, but I don't know you that well." I know, but anyway, it's interesting, and he's going after the Inquisition because the Inquisition's after him because they had a seer, was it either a navigator or someone who was psychically gifted, who saw Ahriman and was listing out the names like Horkos, his other aliases, Mara, Caden, who's a brother to Astraeos, but Caden's sort of dead, sort of, not really, like possessed, demon possessed, and I think Astraeos might be as well. I'm not super sure, but I'm pretty sure it was Caden who's the one who's warp inhabited right now by a demon. Anyway, very interesting stuff happens. There's another space marine who kind of captures demons like Pokemon, not really, but he has their true names. And there's an instance where Ahriman's fighting against Amon, and there's a big sorcery battle going on, and he lists the name of a serpent, not a serpent, I'm sorry, Lord of Decay from Nurgle, because this demon takes the place of Mankura as an oracle, and he's trapped there because of, again, warp fuckery. And of course, there's this awesome battle where he's elevated and he's spitting off the names of every demon he's mentally blocked in his mind, because this is true name, and things of this nature like Enuncia are powerful things, and the true name of something gives you control over them. So imagine you unlock, a traumatic memory, but this isn't really traumatic in a sense, but it is in the fact that you can't conceptualize the true name of a demon when it takes, you're saying their name for 30 minutes. So just imagine this dude's hovering, and he starts spitting names off, like like that, but probably more eloquently since he's a pretty much ageless space marine. And there's this huge demonic battle where there's a demon of Slanesh trying to kill Ahriman, but now there's a Nurglite greater demon destroying them, and it's just so fucking awesome. There's no other way to describe it. The shit's just cool. I love magic, and I love how the Thousand Sons just always have some mystical shit going on, and it's truly great. And there are some really good characters in here, but I didn't write notes on them. That's my bad. But they're still really the same characters, and this leads into a third story where apparently Astraeos has been captured, and this starts a whole new story, kind of tracing back the steps of Ahriman trying to find the Atheminium, which is the artifact I was referring to earlier, which would help him sort of save the Thousand Sons. So that's sort of part one of Ahriman. I know this was sort of all over the place, but so is this book, in the sense it's not a bad book, actually. Listen, I know there was a commenter who was thinking of getting this, and for all intents and purposes, this is a good book. I do recommend it. It's honestly, it's not shaping up to be one of my favorites, but it is good. I like the Thousand Sons. I like magic. I like mystery and secrets, and Tzeentch is really chock full of that. And if you're really on the fence about it and you're like, well, I wasn't the biggest Ahriman fan, considering the only thing I know about him is through lore videos, and there's a really good YouTuber. Not a Vox in the Void, although he's a really good YouTuber as well. I listen to his videos. Was it the Amber King? I think it was the Amber King who did a video on Ahriman, and I was like, okay, sounds really cool. And got the ball rolling and the chain was moving and whatnot, but really good book. I know this was scattered, but trust me when I say there's more to come, and I'm going to put in more notes, more, it will be a lot more organized. And I know I'm sort of jittery and moving around, but that's because I'm excited. I genuinely enjoy talking about this stuff, and Ahriman's a good journey. There's obviously so many secrets and so many, ways of, you're figuring out just who Ahriman is, and he's figuring out himself who he is, and he's reaffirming his identity in this book. And in these stories, he comes, I can't do this. I can do this. Fate is not set in stone. And time again, it's shown, even when he makes the same mistakes, there's always another option. There's always another choice. Do or do not, or the third choice. Ahriman always takes the third choice, his own path. Yes, no, it doesn't matter. He does what he wants. And it's always refreshing to see that. I personally am of the belief that chaos makes interesting characters. Okay, I don't think chaos makes boring characters. I think loyalist characters are, are they a little boring? I think certain chapters are boring. I'll be honest. But chaos, I've yet to really read a chaos book that's made me not invest in a character or not feel like I've just don't enjoy the characters. And I'm a Dark Angels fan, and I'm reading the Dark Angels omnibus, and I have to say they have no personality. But that's probably a Dark Angels thing. So again, it's a good book. It's honestly a really good book. And speaking of Dark Angels, I'm also reading Descent of the Angels. I might make a video on that when that's done. But this was Ahriman. We just covered Ahriman the Exile and another short story, the Dead Oracle. And the first Exile was 2 parts. And obviously, I did skip over quite a bit, i.e., with Menkura, the Prophet, and the Rubike and Amon. There's a lot going on there, but I don't want to get super into it because if you plan on reading the book, and you should, by the way, guys, don't just stick to meme lore or listening to YouTubers, although those are good resources, and I myself listen to like 5 hour lore videos when I'm just chilling. Reading the books really does help, and I promise you, you're missing so much context when you're only reading excerpts. You really are not getting the full appreciation of it, I think. So, that being said, I know this was a long one. If you stuck around the whole time, whoa. If you stuck around the whole time, thank you. I really do appreciate it. 1 viewer, 30 viewers, 100 viewers. I'm just happy to talk about the things I enjoy when it comes to Warhammer and that someone's actively listening, so it's appreciated. 2, if you like the video so much you want to stick around, also appreciated. But other than that, this was Ahriman, and I am out of here.